Have you ever heard the phrase, be careful what you wish for? I've been journeying through the multiverse, trying to survive 100 days in all sorts of different challenges and realities. And at the end of the last one, I asked, just make sure I'm not alone in the next one, all right? Yeah, I'm gonna regret that. So this time, there's no mods. It is a pure vanilla instance. The twist, however, is that every 25 days, the server is open to the world and they have one objective, kill the Legundo. And with hundreds of them and only one of me, can I survive? We're gonna find out. But it's time to get started on the journey, loading up a brand new world, day one. I spawned in a savanna biome, which is something that I don't have a ton of experience in. I gotta say, acacia, not my favorite wood. I don't think that's too much of a hot take though. I did find an acacia village, and they do be wild in with cursed water and a nether portal directly in the middle of the village, which gave me a fortune pick right away, which was huge. I did a little bit of mining, prevented some cursed water from breaking this reality, killed their iron golem to get some early game resources, some magma blocks, some netherrack, and did a little bit of searching in the nearby caves. I realized I should probably turn on shaders so this one looks like every other multiverse adventure, and then took a quick nap amongst all of the bushes around me. Day two, I used that magma block to mine out iron underwater, which is an absolutely S-tier move. As I just continued walking in a random direction, trying to put as much distance between me and spawn as possible. I found another nether portal, which had some basic gear, and another village, which I would end up calling my home for a good chunk of this challenge so far. I established a quick forward base, stashed all my gear, planted a bunch of sugarcane, and then killed another iron golem, sleeping into day three, where I just looked around and saw what I could find. A bunch of melons everywhere was great, and then I used more underwater mining until I came out into an aquifer into a huge underground cave. And I have to say, complementary shaders makes this really easy. I crafted up a shield, and I am very undergeared, but it's time to go get some diamonds right away. Day three, and I already have diamonds. The last world that I did this in was my 2000 days hardcore world, so that feels like a good sign. I continued walking around and mining down on the deep slate level into day four, finding more diamonds, gold, and redstone, all components that I know I'm going to need. I'm still squishy as heck though, without any armor, but a shield is doing wonders. I dug my way into a geode, which in any other situation would be great, but doesn't help me here. I returned back up to the surface at about the midday point, using a lighter and a sword to get some cooked steaks really easily, because that's how food works, before calling it a night as every villager was trying to borrow my bed. Going into day five, my first diamond spent was going into an enchanting table and using the leather that I had to build some bookcases. I am very much in speedrun mode, as I want to be prepared as possible for the first hunt, so I'm not just mowed down instantly. One of the villagers wanted to trade sharpness 5 with me, which was amazing right off the bat. So I spent the whole day bone mealing to get enough wheat to trade with a farmer, to get enough emeralds to lock in their trades right away. That is such a huge win so early on. And then on day 6, it's time to get into more resource collection. I chopped down all the acacia trees, which again, is not my favorite, but I can trade them all with a Fletcher in stick form to get even more emeralds. I made some shears and harvested wool from all of the free range sheep that were around the base, making a few additional beds so that the villagers would continue to expand on the town's population. Doing more stick trades and more crafting, that was a really solid day of economics. Going into day 7, I'm 1 week into this world, harvesting all of the wheat fields for anything that is at full capacity, trading that with the emerald, just getting them leveled up. They want melons, which is awesome considering I have a ton sitting around here. Before jumping in a boat and going to explore more around the savannah. I used the flint and sword technique to make sure that my food reserves were staying at max, and stayed up late tonight, trying to hunt down spiders for some bows, for some string, because I have a few upgrades that I want to make. And speaking of upgrades, this is where I'm going to include that Apex Gaming PC's promo ad. Have you ever wanted to become a content creator, or do you want to make the jump to PC modded Minecraft? Why not check out my partner Apex Gaming PCs? They have machines that will get you started in gaming with any of the games that you want, modding, or the more powerful ones to get you set up for content creation so you can make your own 100 days videos. Check out the link down in the description, and make sure to use code Legundo at checkout for 5% off of your order. Now let's get back to the carnage. Day 8, I was still mentally recovering from the absolutely scuffed speedrun that I had done with the Scuff Boys. Go watch that video, it's a lot of fun. So I kind of forgot where I was. I ran around searching for a lava pool, decided to go down to the lower levels instead, and ended up fighting mobs in a large deep slate cavern. Here I found more diamonds, more gold, more resources, and an enderman who dropped an ender pearl for me. That was a big win. I grabbed obsidian from a lava fur, more diamonds whenever I saw them, so I have enough for a portal, and ran out of arrows while fighting so many creepers, digging myself into a 1 wide tunnel and then just pillaring straight up to the surface. And I was at like -50, so that took basically the rest of the day with an unenchanted pickaxe. I crested into the water on day 9, not too far away from the village that I was currently based at, smelting up all the gold, because I'm going to need that for both bartering and golden apples, and building a quick nether portal right here by the base to venture out into another hellish dimension. I invested 4 of my emeralds into stacks of arrows, so I'd have enough projectiles to fight ghasts, slept very quickly, and on day 9, we ventured out into the nether. I quickly turned off shaders so I could see a little bit further and saw not 1, but 2 nether fortresses in very close proximity to where I had entered. I used a little bit of the gold to trade with some piglins that were just wandering around randomly, as there wasn't really a bastion to jump into, getting a few resources and several pearl trades. I spent the rest of day 10 and into day 11 strategically clearing out the nether fortress. This is the least geared and the earliest that I have ever been in here, and this is far better than the pace that I had in the scuffed speedrun. Maybe this is where all my good speedrunning skills and luck went to. Who knows? We'll never know. It couldn't have gone better. But finding wandering blazes and making sure to bonk any wither skeletons that I saw with head-high posts for them that I could just sneak my way under, I was making good progress. I got enough diamonds through the chests in the fortress to craft a diamond chestplate, which was a major one from my iron one that I had started this trip with. Eventually finding my way towards the blaze spawner that was available to open air. I spent a good 10 minutes here just collecting blaze rods because I wanted to make sure that I could just have what I needed. I captured a few stray endermen in boats on the way back, getting enough pearls and enough blaze rods that as I returned to the overworld late in day 12 to do a little potion brewing, I did inventory on what I had in my inventory, and I can go to the end? Is this a good idea? I'm not sure this is a good idea. Let me sleep on it. Day 13, I slept on it. It's probably a good idea. At the top of end cities is amazingly powerful diamond loot, and that can save me a ton of time on enchanting, resource gathering, and levels, which I will also get a ton of if I happen to kill the dragon. So I crafted up enough rockets that if I happened to find an elytra, I'd be able to get home safely. Enough emerald trades for arrows so that I'd have enough projectiles for the fight since my bow was basically unenchanted. Crafted up my Eyes of Ender and threw one, and the journey was on. I spent all day following the eyes, almost due west as far as they would go. At this point, I was nervous that we were gonna start hitting on the world border, because this dimension was far more limited than any other. It was set up as an arena of sorts, and it was going to be collapsing each and every day, losing blocks and potential outroads and methods of travel. As I continued to follow the eyes, I actually sailed over an ocean monument, which tempted me for the gold, but I'm not sure was a risk I wanted to take this early. Wait, I'm talking about risks and I'm about to go to the end? What am I thinking? But I did find a portion of the stronghold exposed to water, dug my way in, and started on stronghold nav. In the library were a ton of really solid books. In the well were a ton of exploding creepers and a child who wanted to bite my ankles. And as it rolled over to day 14, I found the stronghold portal. I broke the spawner and had one eye in it. And wouldn't you know it, I actually had enough eyes to go to the end? I jumped in the portal and I can't believe I'm doing this. This is day 14 and I'm fighting a dragon. But thankfully for this one, there's no Squid Game dolls to constantly mess with me or additional end mechanics. This is a pure classic vanilla dragon fight, and that I can do in my sleep. I use arrows to knock out most of the end crystals, having to pillar up to one of them, but making sure to keep my feet hidden because explosions don't affect your face, children. Keeping a few ender pearls at the ready in case I got eaten up in the sky, so that might be pretty safe. I used an axe primarily and bowed down the dragon, and with no enchantments, this took quite a while, but the dragon did eventually fall. With 66 levels of experience in my pocket and the dragon egg safely stored in my inventory as well, this is the point where normally you would go home, but I was on a mission. As much as killing the dragon was nice, I was here for the loot in the end cities. So I pillared out towards an end gateway through a pearl, and as it rolled over to day 15, I marked my coordinates and then started running through the end, bridging over gaps, torching my way around before I eventually found an end city. Shulker boxes are actually going to be really nice here too, because I'm going to be on the move a lot, and any additional inventory is going to be extremely useful. That many shulker boxes, however, was quite dangerous for me. Near the top of the first tower, I got some excellent gear, a silk touch iron pickaxe, which is gonna come in really handy, some diamonds, gold, you name it. Found an ender chest later, and using one of the chests here and a few shulker shells that I had collected, started crafting shulker boxes so I could store all of this loot. This continued for several days, going into day 16, where I also found an end ship, which had some more resources in the chests, and an elytra at its bow. And with that, being able to fly around, I actually flew in the wrong direction for a little while, coming up on the world border in the end, with an end gateway directly in front of it. Lucky me. As I used that end gateway to return home, and then jumped in the portal to return back to the overworld, I was feeling pretty good. I had a lot of what I needed, and I still had more time to prepare. Day 17 was all about enchanting. So NCD loot is really great, but sometimes the enchantments aren't exactly optimal. And I had put some really basic protection on the diamond chest plate that I had. So I used a grindstone to get rid of that and tried to optimize the enchants a little bit using some of the 69 plus levels, nice, that I had from killing the dragon and a few shulker boxes after that. I was able to get my gear to a pretty good spot and then took a look over the other stuff that I had collected and, ooh, this hurt, but I burned it. There's no way I'm gonna risk this falling into enemy hands. With a full set of diamond gear and a partially enchanted elytra on my back, 17 days into this fight, I am really feeling prepared for what's coming. I spent the night flying around, basically hunting creepers for gunpowder, for both TNT and rockets. I'm gonna need both of those pretty soon. I also needed a lot more iron to set a few surprises for my guests who would be joining me in this world, and I went searching out for all of that. Going into day 18, I continued the burning, and God, I feel a little guilty about that one. I made an anvil with the iron, named my bow, haha funny, and started combining swords and armor pieces to get the best enchantments I possibly could. Using sticks for emeralds was my main way of generating revenue right now, and trading that into the farmer to be able to get some better food was really important. I also stocked up on arrows since I didn't have infinity, and demolished all of the houses because they're made of logs, and logs can become sticks, and sticks can become money. As I slept and rolled over into day 19, I went generally exploring around the world, finding a few ruined portals, looking for a god apple, but this is in the hardcore world, so that luck doesn't translate. Going underwater, just searching for more resources before digging into a large, normal air cave. Here I found an abandoned mineshaft because it's a hardcore video, but I'm collecting all of the gold and lapis that I could find. At this point, my gear is pretty well up and I just need resources. Going into day 20, it's more enchanting, getting the best possible enchants I can find on any of the gear that I had. I combined with the flame bow that I had received to fully equip the elbow, and then did more trading for apples that I turned into golden apples. Protection 4 would start going on all of my armor, so I'd be a little bit better off, and unbreaking on the elytra so it would last longer. Before heading to bed and calling it a night, both in the game and IRL. I'd get back to this the next day.
Okay, so I just realized I didn't have shaders on. So sorry everybody that the last part of the video just kind of looked like garbage. That's my fault.
Day 21, I harvested all of the crops, trading that in for more emeralds, and then trading those emeralds in for additional resources. Digging a pit just barely underground to hide the villagers that I had been cultivating and protecting for these past 20 days underground. Mainly from other players. I don't want them to find my base. This is way too close to spawn. I spent the night hunting creepers for gunpowder just to shore up my reserves. I spent the night hunting creepers for gunpowder to re-up on rockets and shore up my reserves for explosives before running around and looting any other ruined portals that I could find anywhere close to spawn, as well as any other villages. I found another one since all of the villagers back in my home base already had jobs and trades. I spent some time just re-rolling enchants on this specific villager trying to get mending, and I got it. I traded all of their hay bales, and I do mean every single one of their hay bales, back in towards the village, which they paid me handsomely for, as I locked in a few mending books to make sure my gear was going to last me the rest of this fight. As I was flying around nearby, I found a pillager tower and made note of that. It would come in handy later, as long as the border wouldn't deny it to me. Before returning back to the village, very close to the stronghold, which was still just inside the border, grabbing a bunch of sand and taking a quick nap, allowing my machinations to run free. From there, it was time to fly home. From there, I took a slightly different route back towards the center of the map, passing over a desert and looting a few minecart chests that were just sitting out in the open. As I returned back to the center of the spawn though, to start to lay my traps, there was something waiting there for me. Okay. All right, look, this is the earliest, and I mean by far, that you've arrived and you're not supposed to be here. And I know I said I didn't want to be alone, but that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant at all. You can leave now. That'd be great. Yo, whoa! Whoa, how'd you do that? You were not supposed to have control out here. How did you do that? What did you do? What did you change? Why are you here so soon? Normally takes you longer. And almost as if to answer my question, all of a sudden, other players, other travelers started appearing around the map, each one dressed differently, but looking quite familiar to me in one way or another, and I instantly knew that they did not have my best interests at heart. After taunting them briefly with my superiority in gear, my preparations, the intuition that I had, extremely correct, I legged it, flying away as fast and as far as I could into the setting sun. Day 24 and 25 had basically been wiped away from me, stolen from me. So I spent the time looting additional gear, finding a looting 3 sword in a nether portal. I promise this isn't a fake speedrun. And I used it for gunpowder, which came in very handy to increase my reserves. I didn't have time to set any traps, so mobility was gonna be the biggest thing that was gonna keep me alive on this hunt. There were far more of them than there were of me. And while I knew I had superior gear for 25 days of preparation, there was 50 of them, and if they moved and worked as a unit, they were going to be able to take me down. I found another village, dropped my shulker boxes for supplies, and while I was, liberating their hay bales, I had my first interaction with somebody in person. He just stood there, menacingly. He just stood there, using his shield to block my arrows and holding an axe out threateningly, those cold, dead eyes just staring deep into my soul. But I wasn't about to let that happen, and I was going to show them what my true combat prowess was. I downed a quick potion, since I had far too many of them, and quickly hunted down and made my first kill. In this world, I was gonna have to fight to survive. At this point, I figured everything in this world was hostile. Everything was out to get me. So I just continued sailing, moving. They could all watch me, see me as if it was being live streamed directly to them. So my location was always available and suspect. They had these compasses that said that they were pointing directly at me. Something told me that they were gonna know where I was, where I wanted them to or not. And I couldn't trust anything in this world. Until I saw an old friend just pop out in the middle of a field, and my prerogative and my directive immediately changed. Okay, this is Pink Sheep number 7 across multiple universes. I honestly don't know why they happen to be so common, but it's a meme and I'm leaning into it, okay? We're gonna make this work. As I put the time in to create a pen for my new friends so I could secure them in, I had a few people just taunt me and tease me down in the corner. And there they were, multiple of them, preparing to attack. They didn't have as much gear, but they did outnumber me, and I didn't want to get surprised. It was then that the one I struck down was flying through the sky as if granted some ungodly power. And I was worried, I was concerned that they were gonna break some of the rules and the laws of this universe. But they just stood there to observe, floated there to observe. I got my pink sheep friend locked into a box and then went to hunt the hunters, cutting down one of my own hand and then sicking the spiders to end another. As it rolled over into day 27 though, I had my first real challenge in combat. With that out of the way, I knew that they'd be targeting me over my pink sheep friend, or at least I hoped, so I got out of there, drawing their attention and their ire in a different direction. As I flew back towards spawn, trying to get progress on what they were doing, what infrastructure they were setting up, get intelligence, I found a merchant just setting up, making a space for himself, a self-declared demilitarized zone where no one would attack me either. I left a few fish and continued on my way, heading back into the setting sun, trying to harvest more gunpowder from the creepers that were around me. I was just moving, getting as much distance as I could, making them continuously chase me into day 28, where I had made a lap around the whole world, finding my companion just dangling a little bit dangerously. You know what you did, they said, and I wasn't about to have any of that. I used a little bit of water to damage the fall and then shot down the lead so that they'd be safe, knowing that I'm gonna have to take this fight to them if I'm gonna truly protect my friend. I flew back towards the center of the spawn and teased a little bit, taunted, killed, saw somebody with a really cool appearance and kind of felt compelled to let them go. Flying over towards a jungle, capturing more ender pearls, and just maintaining up on resources. As it started to get late into the night on day 28, I had an actual encounter of multiple people this time. Less gear, but damage from more directions meant that I had to think about it a little bit more carefully. The first one was easy enough to get around. They didn't have a shield to prepare themselves. And the second one, while shielded, eventually succumbed to the fire. Everything eventually dies to fire. Day 29, I sailed back towards spawn and left another small donation for the merchant. I don't know why, I feel like they're kind of on my side. As I sailed around glaring at the obelisk, because this is not what I meant, I ended up toying with a few of them. They seemed to respond to me, know about me, seem somewhat connected or in awe or friendly, but I never knew which one of them would turn. Like I did to this person, throwing them a pie as a peace offering, and then an arrow to the face to end the conversation. That one I felt bad about, as I had some pity on the least equipped, and this almost felt like I was fighting children. I just continued sailing around. As I made another lap, I returned back to the plains and saw that the few of these players that were gifted with powers and manipulation, reality changing, the creative spark, they were upping their game as far as trying to mess with me, and I wasn't having any of it. I called their bluff and saw some slime at the bottom. Knowing my pink sheep friend would be safe, I continued focusing on the task at hand. And that's when another prolific reality hopper came my way. As the minutes began to tick down, I could hear this clock ringing in the distance. I knew that I'd have some peace and quiet, some respite soon. So I went and I checked on my pink sheep, which had been fallen down into the cave, luckily safely bouncing on the slime. I'd have to relocate them as soon as I had some peace and quiet, fighting a last-minute enemy or two before the world became quiet. On day 31, with the voices gone and the other players no longer in the world attempting to kill me, my main focus was moving this pink sheep somewhere where no one would find it, so that way I could actually keep it safe. I did some flying around, seeing a floating island in a shattered savanna, somewhat relatively close by, checked my resources and thought, yeah, I can make this work. I started bridging up towards the island, which took a good chunk of the day and triggered that whole feeling in the pit of your stomach when you're about to fall to your death all the time in Minecraft. I dug out a little bit of a spot to be able to hide the sheep in, who we named Error, by the way. Grabbed a few straight ender pearls just to re-up on the stock that I had used during the hunt, and then started boating my sheep friend over, being extremely careful in the dark oak and birch forests because I was starting to have flashbacks of a time when I lost another pink sheep in a situation like this. Once I was at the target destination, I was clearing a beachhead fighting creepers and skeletons, and I was able to capture a zombie villager in a boat. I might be able to use them later. Day 32, it was time to do that whole climb the staircase and get anxiety again, but this time with a sheep, which only increased that level, using wheat to lure them up, just casually holding my breath every time we had to take a turn. I got them into a boat just to hold them on the island for right now, flying back towards the spawn to do a little bit of investigation into what the players were up to. I searched through the different platforms, looked at the mines, went into that chief mart to see what was going on here, finding some slimes and another pink sheep behind their house. What is going on with this world? I flew back towards my village and found the sharpness villager that I had lost at some point. I had no idea where they went right before the hunt, leaving them in here. The rest of the villagers were still underground, but only a few blocks so, and if you were to walk on the surface, you'd hear them. And I know more people are coming, so I want them not to be heard. I started digging down as far as I could, hitting a water cave, making a chute through it, and getting to a point where I had a large spot of stone that I could dig out and make a villager breeder down at this level. I set up the water, and while making a chamber right next to the breeder for me to operate out of, dug into a massive cave, something that would be really useful later. All of that setup and mining with an unenchanted pickaxe and everything else takes a really long time. So in day 34, I'm just getting the potatoes and everything set up, the water channel in place, and digging up to a higher level of the same cave to find a zombie volunteer who wants to nibble on my friend's ankles to help them give me better prices. Capitalism is just strange sometimes. I planted all of the potatoes, and in digging up to go get the villagers from the upper chamber, found one had already fallen in the hole, so that was a bit of jump start. That was nice. As I made it up to the surface, it was starting to get a little bit late, so I slept, and on the morning of day 35, I found a wandering trader who didn't really have anything super useful, grabbing anything I could out of the chest, and, well, the sharpness villager was gonna be hard to move. Now that they won't find sharpness, I was harvesting melons, grabbed all of the work blocks, and pushed the villagers down into a cave where they would work forever. It's totally not a prison. I set up the last little bit of the spawning area, an enchanting table, iron bars to make the curing process go faster. It just works, don't ask me. And then harvested all of the wheat from the surface so that this village would look abandoned and raided. It's all about psychological warfare, not just the weapons that I'm wielding. And then traded that wheat for money because, woo! On day 36, I wanted to make this village look well and properly abandoned, so I tamed the cats so I'd be able to get them down into a lower level. I could potentially use this for a gunpowder farm later on if I have the time and resources to do it, so having them tamed would be useful. I flew around from village to village and, okay, look, I'm not proud of this, but I did take some time to make sure that my enemies would not be able to acquire villagers. As I was flying around, I remembered to turn on shaders, so everything actually looked nice and pretty, finding the corner of the world border, and it was contracting inward. Over here in the taiga, though, there's a lot of brown mushrooms, which is awesome, because I'm going to need that for potions to start with the cure and infection loop for villagers. I flew back over to where the stronghold was, and was checking coordinates and a screenshot that I had pocketed, and yeah, now the portal was on the other side of the wall. The end was no longer accessible to all players, and that's one less thing I had to worry about. I spent the rest of day 37 running around and grabbing sugarcane and, okay. Alright, at least I'm gonna spare the kid. I flew back towards spawn to continue on gunpowder collection and researching what my enemies were up to. On day 38, making sure to go back and get rid of that dirt path so you wouldn't be able to get, you know, a big sign that says, sheep up here. I also buried Error with some light, don't worry, protecting them on that island so that they would never be captured. And with everything out of the way, it was really inconspicuous. With mushrooms in hand, I flew back to my outpost, making some weakness potions. While that was going, I was just getting the villager breeder set up, which took a good chunk of day 39, giving them enough potatoes to hopefully start making some more. The first one that I infected was my Fletcher, trying to get that stick trade down as low as I could for additional resources, doing multiple infection rounds in the process. On day 40, I'm now in a proper loop, with transport all set up and more villagers being infected and cured. I'm looking for some core trades. The Fletcher as my main resource generation. I'm looking for Unbreaking 3, a Cleric for Ender Pearls, so I'd have a lot of mobility during combat, and other books like Protection, Sharpness, Thorns, Fire Aspect, Flame, anything that will give me an edge in combat. Because I only fought and killed about 5 or 6 players in the first hunt, and everybody who had survived was going to keep their progress going into the next one, and I knew they were planning something. But villager work is a slow process, so while it rolled over into day 41, I went down into the dark parts of the cave to fight a bunch of mobs, mainly creepers. This is a very manual gunpowder farm, but an efficient one to some degree, running around and getting everything I could use. As I was doing that into day 42, doing the occasional villager loop whenever I went up to check, I saw a little bit of cobblestone peeking out of one of the corners and went over to find a zombie spawner, which itself was a huge win. And then I opened the chest. No! Oh, no! Oh, no way! Alright, a god apple? I know I'm in a race to find them across the universe with Tanisha, but that's really only in the hardcore world. How did I find one here? Well, that's great. It means I have one get out of jail free card whenever I happen to get really jumped in combat. But for the rest of the night, I continued with my villager restoration fortified loop just to get that infinite money glitch and heading back up to the surface, chopping down any tree that I could find and any house that I could find, basically any log that I could find so I could get more sticks. That continued into day 43, where I finally got an Unbreaking 3 trade from my librarian. This is gonna make my gear last so much longer. I put that on all of my diamond gear so it would be able to survive more combat, because player versus player is really tough on your armor. From there I jumped back down just to get more gunpowder for traps and for rockets, because I still think mobility is going to be my biggest factor, and being able to kill a bunch of players really early automatically from a distance is huge. One of the creepers exploded, revealing a second spawner very close, and then I opened the chest. Look, I'll show you my mods folder, okay? This is all legit. I'm not one of the people who fake this. These spawners were pretty close to each other, and I wanted to see if there was a way that I could get them both active in a single farm, which would give me all of the levels that I could ever want for enchanting. I spent the rest of the day digging, just trying to find a clear path where I could get line of sight to both, but they were just out of reach. From there, I was mainly doing trading, stocking up on pearls, name tags, gunpowder from the creepers, and then calling it a day. On day 44, I went back up to the surface, and I'm really in prep mode. I grabbed all of the obsidian that I could from around the world, completed the nether portal that was right there at spawn, then went off into the nether and found other portals from there, and then proceeded to trap them all with lava. You know, if I'm gonna be hunted by a bunch of people, I'm gonna take that time to prepare to my advantage. I also spent a good chunk of day 45 clearing the nether fortresses, breaking any blaze spawners that I could find so that they wouldn't be able to get blaze powder or nether wart that I found in the gardens, so that potions are denied to my enemies as well. Lava is going to be a big part of my strategy, going through portals to find bases and mine shafts and an enchanting table, which I absolutely borrowed. But I wasn't completely alone in this world, as Philza's killer decided to visit me in one of the caves. Thankfully, I was very prepared. But all this lava made me remind myself that I could potentially get trapped as well. So I brewed up some fire resistance potions as the sun started to rise into day 46, where I was mainly working in the villager breeder, getting a bunch of arrows from the Fletcher so I'm prepared for ranged combat, pearls for mobility, and started organizing my shulker boxes that everything would be just so and ready for a fight. As I returned to the surface, I found a few pillagers just sitting on the surface, and I'm thinking, I could start a raid? Totems? That would be huge for combat. I didn't want to risk it at the actual base and have everything just get obliterated over there, so I started flying around trying to find a village. The world border, though, was closing in more and more with each passing moment, and the tower that I had seen, as well as the village that was near the stronghold that I thought would be pretty good since it was surrounded by water, both of those were now outside of my reach. As I was flying around, however, I found another way to get totems. This woodland mansion embedded into the side of the hill. I snuck in through the roof, bowing down the first evoker to grab my first totem of Undying, and faced the second one head on, but my combat wasn't quite strong enough before they were able to summon a few Vex. And Vex are really terrifying. I think they're probably the most dangerous mob in the game, because you can't block them from getting to you. There's another evoker around the corner with more spells flying my way, and I got down to 3 hearts as they forced me out of the house, purling away. I reset the mob spawns, flew back towards the mansion, and was able to eliminate the 3rd evoker, grabbing my 3rd totem of Undying, which is just a huge win when it comes to player versus player combat. From there, I started flying back to the spawn to lay my traps and prepare for my grand machinations of evil. And then, this world is just as cracked as Series 2. This is the 3rd naturally spawning pink sheep in this world. What is going on? Okay. Okay, so we have a backup. What are you? Okay, let's make sure that they're not in the dark. There you go. Unless their pink sheep escaped. No! There's another one right here! How? I ended day 46 by using my best deceit brain tactics. I might not have set the trap for Tanisha in her base, but I definitely took notes, making several different TNT minecart traps at a house, at a base that I had seen with a pressure plate there, and continuing to pour lava over all of the portals that I could possibly find. I continued that on day 47 as I was mining out a cavity so that nobody could place blocks on the floor. While there, I found a piece of ancient debris, which is pretty big. That makes me feel that I could probably go find more. I found a spot where I was able to dig down into the Y15 range where ancient debris spawns naturally, and then just got to branch mining, using my pick and just obliterating as much netherrack as I possibly could. I found several different chunks of ancient debris, continuing my way through, running back and having to use diamonds to repair the pickaxe just so it would be able to make it that far, before going back to the nether and making a bit of a mistake on my way to where I dug in. With that little near-death jump scare out of the way, I went back down into the debris mines, using chunk borders and mining along them to double my chances of exposing it, since only one vein of ancient debris will spawn in each chunk of Minecraft. And right near the end of day 48, after 3 days non-stop of mining, my boots were complete, and I had a full set of netherite armor. I kept mining around though for the rest of the day because I needed a few more pieces so I could make that one last ingot to upgrade my sword. And I'm really ready for a fight now between that, the god apple, and everything else I've done over the last 25 days. So on day 49, I did final preparations, converting as much as I could in the way of emeralds into verifiable resources that were immediately useful just in case this place would get discovered. I brewed up my final potions, organized my inventory, and prepared for battle. And when I returned back to the center of the world, now there wasn't just one obelisk, there were several, and this odd obsidian structure that I didn't know what its purpose was, until I started seeing names of the people that I had slain in the previous hunt reappearing over it. This could resurrect them, bring them back, and that was extremely dangerous. Yay, it worked! Yes! I died from a melon. Teehee. On day 51, when the hunters started to reappear in the world, I saw a familiar face. Initially, I was really concerned, but not 30 seconds later was he immediately killed by a skeleton. I spoke with the voices in my head. That's Twitch chat. And they agreed to give him another chance because he didn't know that it was hardcore. I would actually come to regret that later. I operated around spawn for a little while, shooting down anybody who seemed even vaguely hostile and giving a little bit of food to the people who seemed oblivious to my presence, while continuing my travel around the server and culling the villager population to make sure that my enemies would not be able to get some. On day 52, as I flew back over the spawn, I was challenged, and I wasn't about to let that go lightly. What's your sign say? The Influx's battle tower. Try me legs, you won't. What? You what, mate? You what? The audacity. There you go. I'm trying your battle tower. I've tried it. Feeling very much prepared for this, knowing I had had 50 days when some of them have only had a 10th of that, I went on the hunt instead. I was searching down and trying to track down players I saw who were well geared, not wanting them to continue to snowball into actually decent weapons and armor. I was tempted to follow down this one wide tunnel to a random thing down underground, and no, that's totally a trap. But I did have others come my way and continuously harass me. Flame bows aren't super effective underwater, but you know what works? Stabbing people in the face. Oh, ooh, cool. Hi, you're dying now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Grey Dog. I did feel bad about that one though, so I did store all of their gear underground in a chest. I wonder if they actually went back and got it at any point in time. Seeing other players start to make advancements in the nether, I made a brand new nether portal, hoped it was far enough away from anything that I had trapped, and went over into the hellish dimension. From there, I found another nether fortress, and that several of the portals had since been untrapped, meaning that they were starting to make progress. I flew around for a little while, trying to see any potential targets before heading back to the overworld, finding another village and handling it. I went back to the nether, flying around to try to track down people in a fortress who I had just seen get blaze rods. This one player walked in front of me at the worst possible time. I followed them through the portal and immediately kind of just... Sorry. I was at the world border, which meant we were pretty far out, and I wasn't sure if the dimensions were linking properly to each other. So I broke the portal, returned back to hell, and ran around searching for a few people who were teasing me. This reality temporarily broke down for a little bit, and we were all shunted back to the hub. Don't worry, we fixed that. And I saw Mongo. In my skin, that felt like a threat. I'm not certain. Once back in the reality though, I saw something that felt even more like a threat, and the fight was on. They're going to die for this. A few of my fellow deceivers had given me specific coordinates to go to, a challenge, a threat, a thought that I wouldn't take them up on it. There's no way I'd walk directly into a trap. Well, they overestimate my intelligence. I walked directly into their trap, but I kind of saw them coming. Don't make me use this. Okay. Okay. Alright, that's 3. Who else is coming in? Bring it on! No one? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did that not happen? GG's though, good fight, good fight. I'm talking trash, but that was a good fight. Yeah, sure, I had to burn my god apple to go 3v1 because I was doing more damage to myself with the pearls than they were doing to me, but the last thing I wanted to do was give them the satisfaction of ending this video early. I went back to the overworld while I still had the god apple effects running all the way to spawn since I was out of rockets, and mowed down a few extra players with the strength and extra power. A few of them slightly abused the whole no fighting at Choofmart rule, which I feel is just a little bit unfair. So I chased them out of that space and got a pretty good solid fight out of that. There were 3 players in full diamond armor with diamond tools, 2 of which I was able to take out in open field, 1 tanked in a corner with a shield up. That shield will not protect you from lava dumped onto your head, my friend, I'm sorry. But as we continued into the night and the sun started to set on day 56, the world would go quiet again. Day 57, now that I was alone with my thoughts, I did a quick sweep over the central space to see if anything was still left sitting around and went back down to my villagers, who were somehow still here undisturbed and had been undiscovered. I returned to work, starting with more infections and curing, setting up a little bit of a zombie conga line, and the work started to meld together into day 58, where I was doing more villager trading and setting up more trades, trying to get a few of the books that I was missing to completely max out my gear. And when I say this melded together, I'm not kidding. It melded together for 3 solid days into day 59 as I continued with the trading cycle and had to expand my villager haul, and the villagers started being a little stubborn on actually taking their jobs into day 60 when I finally got Thorns 3, which would be a nice deterrent for incoming damage, enchanting that onto my armor, and then going down into the caves to get additional gunpowder to just re-up on everything. The world was moving faster. The world border was actually starting to close in, and I could see it from my base here. This would be the final time that I'd be able to access it before the next hunt. As I traded everything that I could for additional resources and went back up to the overworld to just continue to deforest it for more raw materials, for more stick trades, I slept and just continued fighting underground, re-upping on experience to repair all of my gear in a really slow way overall. This was a slog. I continued working through all of the mine shafts and caves, finding any gold I could to make additional golden apples and any creepers for additional gunpowder. And on day 66, as I was continuing on this 10-day economic journey, I heard this sound. I ran up to the surface to see what was happening, and the border was far closer than it was supposed to be. I went to the spawn, and there were even more towers, and there was this hum in the air. There was more corruption over the ground. More of the grass turned to endstone, obsidian everywhere as far as the eye can see, and even more towers. They were early, and they were gonna keep respawning this time. It was no longer a battle of survival. Now it was a fight of attrition. I quickly evacuated as they started connecting in the morning of day 67, landing a good chunk away, but not being able to really go too far. The world border was far too small. And with them being able to just infinitely respawn, they just started throwing bodies at me, using whatever items they had on hand to just continuously try to poke and prod at my defenses. I found somebody who had killed a pink sheep in an earlier iteration and ended them. You will pay for your crimes! Yes! While being chased by just dozens of low gear players, and it lulled me into a bit of a false sense of security. I thought I'd be fine, but something told me that there were others preparing something big. I want an actual challenge. Send the actual challenge. I'd probably regret that. On day 68, I respected the neutrality of the merchants' lands, not killing anyone inside, but the second I crossed the border, they tried to jump me into a cave. I was thankfully able to fight using my wings and my feather falling to keep me alive, checking in on the very top of the world to see if they were building anything up there and eliminating the water so no one can make that trip. As they just continuously started throwing bodies at me, my armor was starting to take some hits, and the phantoms after me didn't really help either. I saw a few better geared players and got hints of a base out off in a corner of the world, so I sailed off there on day 60 nice. I found a horse with diamond armor. I stole the horse and started patrolling, looking for them to make some sort of sign of their power, their strength, or their coordination. Another one stole my horse, so I ran back towards spawn to try to get it. I accidentally killed the horse with a bow. That seems to be a trend of things that I do. But as another round of the people who were just throwing their body at me over and over started to play through, I could hear trumpets in the distance, and an actual crew of equipped players made their way in. It was time for a fight. Multiple players with diamond enchanted armor, swords, shields, and they were fighting in a coordinated fashion, speaking with each other. I stored a bit of the resources, wanting to be somewhat even, and thought, you know what, at this point, everything is on the table. I went back to my space with everyone watching, because soon this was going to be on the other side of the world border anyway. They only had a few minutes to be able to access any of this. I ran and grabbed as many pearls as I could from my cleric and as many arrows, re-upping on as much as I could before heading back to the surface. Killing any of the sheep that are around so food would be denied, I was back to the center again, fighting iron armor equipped players almost constantly. There were so many of them and my armor was starting to show the damage, even if they weren't really attacking my health. As I moved into day 71, the constant onslaught and combat was starting to take its toll. I saw even more equipped players cresting over the hill, and where I respected the neutrality of Truthmart, they certainly didn't, stabbing me regardless of where I was. It was 1v12 in any given moment, and they're trying to use poisons and cobwebs to limit my mobility, set me on fire. But thankfully, I had potions and preparations to make sure that I was going to be mobile and free. The pearls were excellent for being able to get a few hits in and then whoop away before they'd be able to actually come and take me down. And using crossbows and bows, I had them on fire pretty much constantly, being able to eventually get a few kills. The constant chase from one direction and another, back and forth, juking left and right. I started seeing names repeating themselves as players were re-upping on their own gear. I tried to pull a big move play, downing some fire resistance potion and then climbing my way up the lava. Unfortunately, they could see me in the lava and they shot me out of it. I went to throw another pearl and realized my pockets were empty. My resources had been depleted. I was gonna be on my feet only now, and they were getting close. It was down to just a few of them, a half dozen or so, as the respawns had stopped, but they were some of the most geared players of the group. I got cornered to a small peninsula, two of them standing at either side, another one hiding down in the water, as I downed a little bit of food and took close aim. I was able to catch them as they both lowered their defenses for just a moment, sniping them and finding a little... Oh! Yes! Yes! That was close. That was super close. Look, you know what I meant. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. And this, not it. I'm not having it. And I'm tired of this. And I'm done. So I'm gonna make this clear. I'm gonna make this very clear. Okay? I decide when I'm done. Not you. Do you understand? I decide when I'm done. And at this point, with their prospects dashed and the world border closing in even further, I decided to end this story here. I could go for another 20 days in a 100 by 100 world, but you're just gonna be watching me digging a hole and then beating up on a lot of people who have no gear remaining. Instead of going and pushing this a little further, we're gonna do this hunted concept again. And we're gonna have more that we're gonna be doing in it. And I have so many more adventures just over the horizon, so I hope you...
No matter what else he has to say, we must discuss. We gave you a simple task. Collected you from across the multiverse by the dozens, and you still failed me. We will not forget this, but do not worry. I will grant you a second chance. There will not be a third.
Huge thank you to my patrons for helping make this video possible. Go check out Patreon and see the names of the awesome people on screen here now. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, be good to each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.